The first responders who found Zebb Quinn's abandoned Mazda protege couldn't believe what they were seeing. The headlights were still on after 2 weeks, the battery somehow still working. Inside sat a confused Labrador puppy, and on the back window, someone had drawn a pair of lips with an exclamation mark in bright pink lipstick. It looked impossible, a 2-week-old car still aglow, a live puppy waiting inside, bright pink lips, scrawled across the rear window. The location made it even stranger, parked at Little Pig's Barbecue, right next to Mission St. Joseph's Hospital where Zebb's family worked. What kind of person leaves such bizarre clues? Was it a message, a taunt, or something else entirely? To understand this twisted puzzle, we need to go back to the beginning and meet the last person who claimed to see Zebb alive. The perfect friend Robert Jason Owens seemed like the perfect friend. When 18-year-old Zebb Quinn clocked out from his Walmart shift on January 2, 2000, Owens had the ideal suggestion. Why not check out that car Zebb had been wanting to see? Owens appeared helpful, reliable, always ready to lend a hand. The two young men had worked together for months, and Owens seemed genuinely interested in helping his colleague find a good deal on wheels. The plan was simple enough. After finishing their evening shift, they would drive separately to look at a Honda Passport that Zebb had spotted. Owens would follow behind in his own vehicle, ready to offer his opinion, and maybe help with negotiations. It was the kind of favor that good friends do for each other, nothing unusual about it. Zebb trusted Owens completely, after all, who better to bring along when making such an important purchase? But according to Owens, their car shopping trip took an unexpected turn. He told police that while they were driving toward the vehicle, Zebb suddenly received a page on his beeper. The message seemed to throw Zebb into a complete panic. Owens described how his friend immediately pulled over, checked the pager display, and then took off like his life depended on it. One moment they were cruising along together, the next moment Zebb was speeding away into the night, leaving Owens stranded on the side of the road. When investigators interviewed Owens in those first crucial hours after Zebb's disappearance, he appeared to be the perfect witness. He answered every question willingly, showed genuine concern for his missing friend, and provided detailed information about their last evening together. Owens positioned himself as the unlucky bystander who just happened to be there when something went terribly wrong. He painted a picture of himself as someone who cared deeply about finding Zebb and bringing him home safely. The timeline Owens provided seemed solid at first glance. Other Walmart employees confirmed that both men had worked their shifts and left around the same time. The story about looking at a car made sense, everyone knew Zebb had been shopping for a vehicle. Even the sudden departure after receiving a page didn't seem completely out of character for an 18-year-old who might have family issues or girlfriend drama. Here's where things get really interesting though. Owens didn't just provide information to police and then disappear. He actively participated in the search efforts, joining volunteers as they combed through dense forest areas where Zebb might have gone. To everyone around him, Owens looked like a loyal friend who was devastated by the loss. But investigators eventually started noticing tiny cracks in Owens' story. The details would shift slightly between interviews, not major changes, but small inconsistencies that raised eyebrows. For instance, surveillance footage from a gas station showed both men together at 9:15 p.m., but in later interviews, Owens would describe their meeting as happening later that night. These weren't obvious lies, but rather the subtle variations that might indicate someone trying to keep a false story straight. The most puzzling element was that mysterious page itself. When investigators traced the number, they discovered it had come from the home of Zebb's aunt, Ina Astique. This seemed to explain why Zebb had reacted with such panic and driven off so quickly. But when police contacted Astique, She had no memory of making any such call. She insisted that she had been home that evening and had no reason to page her nephew. Even more disturbing, Ustique reported that her home had been broken into that same night, though nothing was stolen. Could it be possible that someone else had used her phone to lure Zebb away? The technology of pages in 2000 made it relatively easy to send messages from any location. The investigation was about to take a turn that would transform this missing person case into something far more sinister. What they found 2 weeks later would prove that someone had been planning something elaborate and twisted from the very beginning. The impossible car. On January 16, 2000, exactly 2 weeks after Zebb Quinn vanished, a customer walking into Little Pig's Barbecue noticed something strange in the parking lot. A blue Mazda Protégé sat there with its headlights blazing bright against the afternoon sun. The car had been sitting in that spot for who knows how long, but somehow the headlights were still working. Any normal car battery would have died within hours of leaving the lights on, yet here was Zebb's vehicle, glowing like a beacon in broad daylight. When police arrived at the scene, they couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. The headlights should have drained the battery days ago. Was someone regularly coming back to charge the battery? Had the car been moved recently? The electrical system defied all logic, creating the first impossible detail in what would become a collection of bizarre evidence. But the working headlights were just the beginning. Inside the Mazda Protégé, officers discovered a live black Labrador mix puppy, healthy and alert. The small dog showed no signs of neglect or hunger. Its coat was clean, its eyes bright, and it seemed perfectly comfortable in the driver's seat. Someone had been caring for this animal, feeding it, making sure it stayed alive during those 2 weeks of winter weather. Investigators later learned the pup was adopted by one of the detectives. The puppy's presence raised immediate questions. Where had it come from? Zebb Quinn had never owned a dog, and his family had no knowledge of him planning to get one. The young Labrador was maybe 8 weeks old, just a baby that would have required constant attention and regular meals. Could it be possible that someone had been visiting the car regularly, not just to maintain the battery but to feed and care for this puppy? Investigators also found a plastic hotel key card tucked inside the vehicle. The card looked generic, the kind you might get from any number of hotels or motels in the area. Despite extensive inquiries, the key card was traced to no known North Carolina hotel, leaving investigators frustrated with another dead end. The card could have been the key to understanding Zebb's final hours, but it became another puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere. The most disturbing discovery waited on the back window. Someone had drawn a pair of lips and an exclamation mark in bright pink lipstick. The drawing was deliberate, not random scribbles but carefully crafted symbols that seemed to carry meaning. Police stated they had never encountered anything like this lipstick artwork in their previous investigations. What message was someone trying to send? Was it a signature, a taunt, or some kind of code? The choice of symbols seemed almost playful, like something from a child's game rather than a crime scene. Lips could represent a kiss, a goodbye, or perhaps silence. The exclamation mark suggested surprise, urgency, or emphasis. Together, they created a puzzle that investigators couldn't solve, no matter how many theories they developed. Forensic teams found no unknown fingerprints or DNA, every print belonged to Zebb or his family. The car had been wiped clean of any traces that might identify the person responsible for this elaborate scene. Here's where things get really interesting. The driver's seat had been adjusted for someone much shorter than Zebb Quinn. The 18-year-old stood nearly 6 feet tall, but the seat was positioned for someone at least 6 inches shorter. This detail proved that someone else had been driving the Mazda Protégé after Zebb's disappearance, someone who had taken the time to adjust the seat for comfort before abandoning the vehicle. Zebb's mother, Denise Vlahakis, believed the car's location was no accident. She worked at Mission St. Joseph's Hospital, just a short distance from Little Pig's Barbecue, along with Zebb's grandmother and sister. Could it be possible that someone had chosen this specific parking lot knowing that Zebb's family would eventually pass by and discover the vehicle? The location seemed designed to ensure the car would be found by people who cared about Zebb, not by random strangers. Every element of this discovery pointed to careful planning. The working headlights, the healthy puppy, the mysterious lipstick drawing, the adjusted driver's seat, none of these details happened by chance. Someone had orchestrated this entire scene, but their motives remained completely unclear. The answer might lie not in the physical evidence, but in the hidden corners of Zebb's personal life. The other woman investigators soon discovered that Zebb Quinn's personal life held secrets that might explain his sudden disappearance. The 18-year-old had been pursuing someone who was already taken, and that pursuit had put him directly in the crosshairs of a dangerous man. Misty Taylor had captured Zebb's attention in the weeks before he vanished. She was beautiful, charming, and unfortunately for Zebb, already in a relationship with Wesley Smith. But young love doesn't always respect boundaries, and Zebb had been actively trying to win Misty's heart despite knowing about her boyfriend. He called her regularly, sent messages, and made his romantic intentions crystal clear to anyone who would listen. Wesley Smith wasn't the kind of man who took competition lightly. Friends and family members knew him as someone with a violent temper, especially when it came to protecting what he considered his territory. Smith had a reputation for explosive anger and wasn't shy about making threats when he felt disrespected. The idea of some teenager trying to steal his girlfriend away triggered exactly the kind of rage that could lead to serious trouble. Zebb had told multiple friends and family members about Wesley's threats. He wasn't keeping the danger secret, he shared that Smith had warned him to stay away from Misty or face the consequences. These weren't vague suggestions but specific threats that made Zebb nervous enough to discuss them with several people. The young man seemed to understand he was walking into a potentially explosive situation, but his feelings for Misty apparently outweighed his concerns about Wesley's warnings. The timeline of Zebb's interactions with Misty became crucial to understanding what might have happened that night. Phone records showed regular communication between the two in the days leading up to his disappearance. Their conversations were becoming more frequent and more intimate, suggesting that Zebb was making progress in his romantic pursuit. Could it be possible that Wesley had discovered just how serious this relationship was becoming? When police interviewed Wesley Smith, they found a man who openly admitted to being angry about Zebb's interest in his girlfriend. He didn't try to hide his feelings or pretend he was okay with the situation. Smith confirmed that he had confronted Zebb about staying away from Misty, and he made it clear that he considered the teenager a threat to his relationship. His honesty about the conflict actually made him seem more credible, not less. Misty Taylor herself presented a different picture when investigators questioned her. She acknowledged that Zebb had been calling and expressing romantic interest, but she insisted that she hadn't encouraged his advances. According to Misty, she was committed to her relationship with Wesley and had tried to discourage Zebb's pursuit without being cruel about it. Her version of events painted her as an innocent bystander caught between two men's conflict. Here's where things get really interesting though. Both Misty and Wesley had solid alibis for the night Zebb disappeared. They claimed to be having dinner at the home of Tamara Taylor, Misty's mother, along with a surprising dinner guest, Ina Astique, Zebb Quinn's paternal aunt. The same aunt whose phone number had been used to send that mysterious page that made Zebb panic and drive off into the night. Ina Astique confirmed the dinner party but swore she never sent any page to her nephew. She had been enjoying a meal with the Taylor family and Wesley Smith when someone supposedly used her home phone to contact Zebb. After dinner, Ina discovered that someone had broken into her home. Nothing was reported stolen, but the timing raised serious questions about who might have had access to her house and phone line that evening. Investigators spent weeks trying to connect Wesley Smith to Robert Owens, but they couldn't find any relationship between the two men. Smith had a clear motive for wanting Zebb gone, but no apparent connection to the co-worker who had been with Zebb that night. The love triangle provided a perfect reason for murder, but the evidence trail led nowhere. The case was heading toward a dead end, and it would stay that way for a very long time. The long silence, 17 years, the Zebb Quinn case gathered dust in filing cabinets while Robert Owens went about his daily life. The investigation had hit every possible dead end. Witnesses had been interviewed multiple times, evidence had been analyzed and reanalyzed, and still no answers emerged. On July 10, 2017, Zebb was officially declared legally dead, a legal formality that felt like closing the book on a mystery that would never be solved. But Owens wasn't finished killing. On March 12, 2015, another young couple entered his deadly orbit. Christy Shern Codd was a rising star in the culinary world, known for her appearances on Food Network cooking shows. She was 5 months pregnant and building a beautiful life with her husband J.T. Codd in their home near Leicester, North Carolina. The couple had hired Owens to do handyman work around their property, trusting him with access to their home and their daily routines. When the Codds disappeared on March 15, 2015, the scene at their house told a chilling story. Their dogs were still there, hungry and confused. Christie's purse sat on the counter next to JT's wallet, containing all their identification and credit cards. No one leaves home without these essential items, especially not a pregnant woman and her protective husband. The house looked like its occupants had simply vanished into thin air. Investigators immediately focused on Robert Owens. He lived nearby, and had been working on the couple's property in the days before their disappearance. When police questioned him, Owens displayed the same helpful attitude he had shown 17 years earlier with the Quinn case. He answered questions willingly, expressed concern for the missing couple, and positioned himself as just another worried neighbor who wanted to help find them. Here's where things get really interesting though. Someone tipped off authorities about items belonging to Christy Codd showing up in a dumpster on Donna Drive. The discovery led investigators straight to Owens' home, where they executed a search warrant that would uncover one of the most gruesome crime scenes in North Carolina history. Inside Owens' wood stove, investigators found what appeared to be human remains. The pieces were small, burned, and deliberately destroyed, but forensic experts could still identify them as belonging to the missing couple. Owens had dismembered and incinerated JT and Christy Codd, along with their unborn child, in the same wood stove he used to heat his home. The method of disposal was shockingly familiar to investigators who remembered the Quinn case. Dismemberment and burning, these weren't common ways to dispose of bodies, especially not in rural North Carolina. Both cases involved the exact same brutal techniques for destroying evidence. The parallel methods couldn't be coincidence. Owens was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and the murder of an unborn child. In April 2017, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of dismemberment. His explanation for the killings was almost casual. He claimed he had run the couple over with his truck. But then he admitted to cutting up their bodies and burning them, treating the disposal like a routine cleanup job. Could it be possible that Owens had been practicing his killing technique over the years? The Codd murders showed a level of comfort with extreme violence that suggested experience. He knew exactly how to dispose of bodies, how to destroy evidence, and how to maintain his innocent facade while committing horrific acts. The same day Zebb was declared legally dead, a Buncombe County grand jury indicted Robert Jason Owens for first-degree murder in the death of Zebb Quinn. The indictment came after 17 years of waiting, 17 years of Owens living freely while Zebb's family wondered what had happened to their son. Investigators began searching Owens' property in Leicester, where they found fabric, leather materials, and unknown hard fragments buried under a layer of concrete. They also discovered an unknown white powder substance and pieces of metal that could have been evidence from the Quinn murder. The district attorney decided not to pursue the death penalty, setting the stage for a plea deal that would finally provide answers about what happened to Zebb Quinn. After more than 2 decades of silence, Owens was finally ready to talk. The uncle's ghost on July 25, 2022, 22 years after Zebb Quinn disappeared, Robert Jason Owens, sat in a Buncombe County courtroom and finally decided to talk. Already serving life in prison for the brutal murders of Christy and J.T. Codd, Owens had nothing left to lose. His plea deal would legally establish that Zebb Quinn had been murdered, despite the absence of his body, but the story he told would shift all the blame onto a man who could never defend himself. Owens pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact to first-degree murder, admitting his involvement in covering up Zebb's death while pointing the finger at his uncle, Walter Gene Owens. According to Robert's confession, Gene was the real killer, hired by Wesley Smith to eliminate his romantic rival for just a few $100. The story painted Robert as an unwilling witness to murder, someone who got pulled into a nightmare he never saw coming. Here's the detailed account that Owens provided to investigators. He claimed that Gene had contacted him on the night of January 2, 2000, asking for help with something important. Robert said his uncle convinced him to bring Zebb Quinn along, though he never explained why Zebb's presence was necessary. The 3 men allegedly drove to Pisgah National Forest, where Gene had supposedly planned to carry out the hit. Once they reached the remote forest location, Owens said his uncle pulled out a .22 rifle and shot Zebb Quinn without warning. Robert claimed he watched in shock as his uncle killed the 18-year-old, then forced him to help dispose of the evidence. The shooting was quick and brutal, according to Owens, leaving him traumatized but unable to escape his uncle's control. The story gets even more disturbing from there. Owens described how Gene dismembered Zebb's body in the forest, then transported the remains back to his property for burning. The process was methodical and planned, suggesting that Gene had experience with this kind of violence. Robert claimed he was forced to participate in the disposal, helping to burn the body parts in a wood stove while Gene supervised the destruction. But what about all that bizarre evidence found in Zebb's car? Owens had an explanation for every strange detail. He said Gene forced him to plant the Labrador puppy, and draw the lipstick markings on the back window. The lips and exclamation mark weren't random symbols but specific instructions from Gene, designed to confuse investigators and throw them off the trail. Even the hotel keycard was supposedly placed there on Gene's orders. Owens claimed his uncle made him adjust the driver's seat and position the car in that restaurant parking lot near the hospital where Zebb's family worked. Every element of the discovery was supposedly orchestrated by Gene, who wanted the car found in a way that would create maximum confusion for police. The working headlights after 2 weeks were explained as Gene returning to charge the battery and check on the puppy. The timing of Gene Owens' death couldn't have been more convenient for Robert's story. Walter Gene Owens died of cardiac arrest in 2017, just before Robert was indicted for Zebb's murder. With the supposed real killer dead and buried, there was no way to verify any part of Robert's confession. The man who could have confirmed or denied these accusations was conveniently beyond the reach of investigators. Prosecutor Jeremy Ingle expressed serious doubts about Owens' version of events. The district attorney's office accepted the plea deal not because they believed the story, but because proving first-degree murder after 22 years would have been a steep challenge. As Ingle pointed out, motive remained unproven and cause of death unknown, making a conviction far from guaranteed. District Attorney Todd Williams acknowledged the lingering uncertainty in a written statement. While we may never know the full truth these many years after Zebb's disappearance, my sympathies are with the family and all who have suffered as a result. His words captured the frustrating reality that even with a confession and conviction, major questions remained unanswered. Could it be possible that Owens was still lying, even while confessing to being an accessory to murder? His story conveniently explained away every piece of evidence while painting himself as a victim rather than a perpetrator. The plea deal gave him a concurrent sentence that added no additional prison time to his existing life sentence. After decades of silence, Robert Owens had finally spoken, but his words created more mysteries than they solved. The confession brought legal closure, but emotional questions linger. After 22 years of investigation, we have a conviction, but the Zebb Quinn case still feels unsolved. Robert Jason Owens finally admitted his involvement, yet his story about Uncle Gene being the real killer seems designed to protect himself one final time. The bizarre evidence, the working headlights, the healthy puppy, the lipstick drawing, none of it makes complete sense, even with Owens' explanation. At the plea hearing, Zebb's mother Denise Vlahakis captured the heartbreak perfectly. This is the young man who trusted his friend, Jason. Somewhere in North Carolina's mountains, Zebb's remains may never be found. Which parts of this puzzle will we never solve, and what price do the family's unanswered questions demand? What do you think that lipstick symbol really meant? Share your theories in the comments below.